Hey friends! Before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to share something close to my heart. Before I get into it, as you may or may not know, outside of being the host of Robot Unicorn, I'm also the founder of Nurtured First. Through Nurtured First, we provide educational resources like courses, blogs, printable toolkits, and more to help parents and caregivers raise children in safe and loving homes. So here's what's close to my heart. If you've ever struggled with bedtime battles, I get it. I went through it myself with our oldest daughter. Our nights were filled with tears and frustration until one night Scott asked me why I thought it was so hard for my daughter to sleep alone. I realized that I had been seeing bedtime all wrong. The root of her struggle wasn't her being bad or trying to keep me up for hours at night. It was about feeling safe and connected, not just sleep. That's why I'm really excited to introduce you to Solving Bedtime Battles, our best-selling course designed to help families like yours and mine find peace at bedtime. The course offers practical, responsive tools for kids ages 2 to 12, helping them feel secure and safe in their own beds as they drift off to sleep. With Solving Bedtime Battles, you'll learn how to create a calming bedtime routine, address separation anxiety, that was the problem we were having, but you'll also learn how to night wean and make bedtime something that your child looks forward to. It's helped thousands of families turn bedtime from a struggle into a soothing and restful time. You can find the course by heading to the link in the show notes. We've also given you a special code since you're a podcast listener, which is Robot Unicorn. Use this code to save 10% on your purchase. Let us help you make bedtime a more peaceful and loving part of your day. Okay, let's head to the show now.
Hey, and welcome to Robot Unicorn, a podcast where we explore all things parenting. I'm your co-host, Scott, joined, as always, by my wife, Jess, a registered psychotherapist who spent decades working with children and families. Today, we're absolutely thrilled to share our conversation with Dr. Deborah MacNamara, a clinical counselor, developmentalist, and faculty member at the Neufeld Institute. Deborah is the director of Kids Best Bet Counseling Center and brings over 25 years of experience working with children, youth, and adults. She's an award-winning author whose books include the best-selling Rest, Play, Grow, which has been translated into more than 15 languages. This episode specifically holds special meaning for us, as Deborah has been not just a respected colleague, but also a mentor and friend to Jess over the years. Their shared passion for understanding children has informed so much of our own parenting journey and Jess's educational journey. Today's conversation centers around the themes in Dr. Deborah's latest book, Nourished: Connection, Food, and Caring for Our Kids. We explore how feeding our children is about so much more than nutrition. It's deeply intertwined with attachment, emotion, and the parent-child relationship. As Deborah so beautifully puts it, the road to the stomach must go through the heart. So whether you're struggling with picky eaters, family mealtime chaos, or simply just curious about the deeper meanings of how we nourish our children, this episode offers a fresh perspective that moves beyond rigid food rules and toward connection and understanding. So grab a cup of something comforting, like a coffee or tea or something, and join us for this nourishing conversation with Dr. Deborah MacNamara.
Welcome to Robot Unicorn, hosted by my parents, Jess and Scott. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Our topic today is mostly around nourished and the idea of food and eating and relationship and all that. But before we dive into that, we'd love to hear about a moment or experience that first sparked your passion for that concept or understanding how we nourish ourselves just beyond the basics of food. Because there must have been something that sort of spurred this on.
Yeah, there was many. I mean, I write about in the book about my daughter who was 3 and just incredible what I would call picky eating. Well, many parents would call picky eating. And just being so frustrated and going to Gordon Neufeld, who was my postdoc supervisor at the time, and saying, what am I supposed to do here? I'm getting a battle here with my kids. I'm creating an attachment problem, which is quite ironic because I'm helping other parents with their attachment issues. So it was a real crisis of confidence, really. And he basically turned my head around, and his answer, which I won't spoil it for you in the book, was this isn't actually about the food. And I think that's the whole underlying theme of everything. It's actually not about the food as much as we think it is. Of course, we have, neurobiological differences and sensitive palates and whatnot and smell. But really, when we're starting to get into trouble around food and food issues, it's really about relationships. So that turned my head around. I thought I understood how to do this. I eat. I like food. I fed my first daughter okay. But my second daughter was completely different. And so it threw me for a loop.
Yeah. I love the way, and nourished, like all your work, that's the underlying theme, right? It's not about often the thing that we think it's about. So for people listening, Dr. Deb and I, we meet regularly. We've known each other for a couple of years now. And I was thinking about the one time we were talking about how I was trying to serve my kids chicken on a bun. It was summertime and I just was dysregulated. I was having a hard day and I thought to myself, I'll just make the girls something really easy that I know that they're going to want to eat. They love having chicken on literally chicken, ketchup, and a hot dog bun. Like the easiest thing. I know they like this. It's so easy. So I made it for them. And then I just gave them plates and said, okay, go outside, go eat. Like mommy needs a break. I need to sit by myself. And then they all are just like, I don't like this. I don't like chicken on a bun. And I was about ready to lose my mind. I'm like, you do. I know you do. I know you like this. And I remember I told you the next day and then we had a laugh about it. And then you said something so obviously wise, well, what kind of rested state were they in before you tried to serve them chicken on a bun? And then we laughed. I said, they weren't. I just threw them the plates and told them to go eat. But I think about that conversation we had all the time, because how often as parents are we feeding our kids in that way and then wondering why they won't eat?
Yeah, it's amazing. I love that story. And yeah, I mean, it was good food. It's what you always like. What could possibly go wrong here? And there's so many invisible things that get attached to food. It is an emotional event. It's meant to be paired with rest and safety. And so when we're discombobulated or alarmed or in a hurry, all those emotions get in the way of opening up your tummy and being receptive to food. And we're just not meant to eat outside of connection. That's the other huge piece, right? We're meant to eat in connection. So yeah, they feel a little lost when we're not anchoring them. We've got a million things we're doing in our head, but they're not quite as receptive.
Yeah. And I really wanted to get into that today because I think exactly what you just said, we're meant to eat in connection. I think that's something that's so lost right now. And even on Nurtured First, whenever I talk about that, a big thing I'll talk about is family dinner and how that's really important to us. And people will say, oh, well, we just don't have time. Like we're too busy. There's too much going on. So I was wondering if you could just expand a little bit on your research and your wisdom in the area of connection being the root of food struggles.
Well, I mean, it certainly put my head for a spin, first of all. It seems so self-evident, but it's gotten so lost. And I think what you said is that we're just too busy. We've got competing responsibilities. Our kids have competing responsibilities and activities. And so what is critical for survival, or what is important for survival, is getting drowned out by what seems urgent and ever on our doorstep. And so we don't protect spaces for connection. I know it sounds simple, but it's true. We just don't save those spaces. It's invisible what happens here, the emotions of care, of love. We think, well, we're showing up, we're working hard to provide a good meal, the cost of food, the time that it takes. And we think, certainly this should be care. Well, it is. However, if it's not paired with a sense of rest, if there isn't a sense of presence, of warmth and delight. I asked everybody in my research, which, by the way, I don't know if I should be embarrassed or what to say, that it took me about 10 years to write this and do the research and interview people. Like every time I was running into, oh, is it about the family table? No, it's not just about the family table. Is it about the food? No, it's not just about the food. Is it about picky eating? No, we've got that wrong too. So it took me a long time to turn over a lot of these things and to rethink them. But one of the questions I love most in my research was, I said, does food have love in it? And people all said yes. And then I said, well, why? How do you know it has love in it? Love is invisible. You can't put it on the packaging of food. You'll get in trouble from the government if you start listing it as an ingredient. But everybody said, yes, I can taste the love in food. Well, how? Well, there was a couple of things. Number one, did someone spend time and attention, paying attention to what I like? And it didn't have to be a 5-course meal. It just had to be that the person knew I liked rice instead of pasta. I like tomato sauce, or I like butter. Just very simple things. Were they paying attention to who I was? The second thing was, did they have good intentions? Did they actually want to feed me in a way that was met with caring and generosity? Even if you burned your food, if they believed that you had good intentions, your food tastes better. It was absolutely wild. Love and connection changes the actual taste of food. And of course, the last thing that people said was there warmth? Was there caring? Like real caring, right? Not just I'm showing up to give you food, but real caring and connection and collecting over the food. And those three things embedded food with love. They're invisible. It's about how we show up. It's not about what we eat. But these things get missed over and over again.
It's interesting that you say that because I feel like the immediate visualization that I have is going to my grandmother's and having a meal with her. And we still do that to this day. So now we go camping once a year and we've tried to share a meal with her as like Jess, myself, and our three daughters spend time with her and actually have a meal, or at least one meal, maybe a couple together.
Beautiful. And you can feel the resonance, right? Because food, the senses of food, the smell, the taste, the emotions surrounding it, like taste and food can transport us back to people and places that felt like home. So why wouldn't we capitalize that, right? Why wouldn't we capitalize on that in a world that we have so many competing attachments for our kids with the screens, with their peers, with the sheer busyness of life? Why would we not capitalize on this very ancient template of keeping us together? But it requires us to show up around food with these ingredients in tow, with the emotional, relational ingredients.
Yeah. And I think that's the part where our generation of parents seems to be really struggling. I think for a lot of my friends, I think about it and they're probably like, yeah, I know that it's important to eat together, but it kind of goes back to that busyness or that feeling of like, how can I do that? And then also, but my kids are so picky, right? So back to the picky eating, right? So they won't eat it. I have friends that say that to me all the time because a rule in our house is whatever I make is what it is. If it's chicken on a bun, it's chicken on a bun, essentially,
Yeah,
right?
we're not making several meals, one individual to each child.
And I know you have a lot of thoughts on that too. And I thought it would be really important to talk about because I have a lot of friends exhausting themselves and really having a hard time at dinner because they're making 5 different meals, for every kid, making sure that there's something that everybody likes. And it's exhausting. And then it doesn't feel for them like it's done with love and nurturing and care because they're frustrated with their kids that they have to make so many meals.
It's just adding to the stress that parents already have.
Yeah. So to those parents, do you have some insights for them?
Well, so much has gotten turned upside down with food, right? Like here we are catering to our children instead of taking the lead on food. So I liked what you said. I make the food that I can afford, that I have accessible to me, that you know how to make. You make all those decisions for your child, your family, and you show up to provide the best that you can. The idea that we would put children in charge of food, letting them tell us what they need, how much, what kind of food. If you look at it from a relational point of view, you're really turning the tables on the caretaking equation. We're meant to lead, we're meant to know, we're meant to understand, we're meant to gauge receptivity, and we're meant to provide. Now, what that provision looks like is up to you, but what does a generous provision look like for you? And so anytime you put your children in a lead, you're going to have resistance potentially. You're going to have upset, alarm. You're going to have bossiness, commanding, demanding. Anytime we put our kids overly in the lead on anything that we're meant to be responsible for. Yes, they should be able to choose from what we provide. We shouldn't be force feeding them. We shouldn't be saying you have to eat so much of this. But how do you show up in a generous way? Like I remember this experiment that I write about in Nourished, where I basically had people come over for dinner. And I knew what everybody could eat and couldn't eat and allergies and things like that. And we said, well, what can we bring? Nothing. I'm going to provide for you. What are you going to make? Food. And you're going to like it. I just remember. And it was an experiment, right? This incredible arrogance. And I thought, I'm going to make a salad. I'm going to make a soup. My kids didn't eat soup like that. And some sort of meal. And I served it family style, which, by the way, family style in the research is shown to be much more effective. People feel less coerced. You put on the table. People can choose. People can see, people can see that other people are enjoying it more. So if you're more reluctant, you don't feel pushed, yet you can see your loved ones enjoying it. So that then says to your attachment emotional brain, this must be safe. My loved ones are eating it. Therefore, I might like it too. If you are connected to that person and that person has influence. So I remember just, preparing this meal very carefully, feeling very good about the generosity, the warmth and the care that was going into it. And it shifted something for me when I put it on the table. I'm like, they're going to eat what they want to eat. How much they eat is up to them. I'm going to give them the best food I can possibly have here. And I did. And I just sat back and thought, I have provided well. Now it's up to you to eat from what I provided. So yes, we have to pay attention to what people eat. My daughter was a vegetarian, so I would add protein and iron-based kind of things to the table. So we'd be eating butter chicken with edamame, and they just thought that's just how we ate. People are like, well, does this go together? I'm like, no, this is just how we eat. It's kind of fusion, but they didn't know. And that's the whole point. They're not meant to know. I have to take care of them in the context of what I'm looking at and who's around my table. So I don't think we keep these things invisible enough. And here's the secret when it comes to picky eating. It's actually not that difficult, is that at the age of 2 or 3, most children should come into an age of autonomy. Me do. I do it myself. No, daddy, no, mommy, I do myself. It's like, it's a 5-point harness. Your fingers can't do the 5-point harness. No, I do it myself, or a boot.
We're living
that with our 3-year-old right now.
I thought that one might be close to home, or the boots they want to put on, or whatever it is, right? And you can see them, and they've just got this burst of autonomy because they finally come alive in the sense that they are now more of a coherent little self. And so, of course, when it comes to food, they start to say, I want to explore. I want some autonomy. I want to decide. They're allergic to coercion at this age. The more you push, the more they back up. They go boneless. They fall down. They just pretend they can't hear you. People send them into tests to get their hearing checked, and they're like, oh, they can hear you. They're just locking down on resistance. They're absolutely allergic to coercion. And then you say, you must eat broccoli. Broccoli's good. Oh, I hate broccoli. And you're like, why? This is organic broccoli that cost me $10. How can you not eat this broccoli? It's got the cheese sauce on it that you like. What you hit is the child's psychological self who's trying to become their own person, have autonomy, is allergic to coercion, and you're being coercive with food. Food is a gift. All you have to do is say, Daddy, look at this broccoli. I got this broccoli. Wow. Can I have a taste? Sure. Here, have a taste. I love this broccoli. Don't say anything else. If they're sweet on Daddy, and Daddy likes broccoli, they're more likely to want to try broccoli. They might not try it there. They might be looking at it. They might be smelling it. They might be watching you. But the research is really clear. At the age of 2, a child knows that what you might eat may not be what they like, but because they like you, they're more inclined to try it. So as soon as you put coercion in there, all bets are off.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I feel like most of the time I'm allergic to coercion as well. So it makes sense.
That's still a toddler.
Yeah, maybe that part of my brain is still in toddler mode, but
we're still working on some integration of those parts for him. But
well, we should be all allergic to coercion. I think it's still it's instinctive, it's emotional, it's there to serve us and protect us. So yes, but little kids have a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, it is still important for us. But I know in our practice too, I think parents get alarmed very quickly over when their toddler says no to food. So we do see this a lot in our practice, and I'm curious about yours as well, where parents come in, they say, well, they're picky eaters, they don't like anything, or, something wrong with them. Like they used to like broccoli, now today they don't. What's wrong with my toddler? They change their minds every day. And I think it's important to know that that's their job and that's what they'll do, but we don't necessarily join into that chaos.
You're still describing me, I think. Jess and I have had that conversation. I am not a fan of leftovers for some reason, just because I don't like having the same thing multiple days in a row.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you on that. I didn't address the leftover business but in the book, but maybe they're a form of coercion, leftovers, right? You will eat these. You can't waste these. Your question about toddlers, I mean, toddlers are predictably unpredictable. They are not like us at all. They would qualify for most mental health disorders, but they're not disordered at all. They're just preschoolers. They live in the moment. They don't think twice, and they don't think about consequences. And so, of course, our ways of approaching them oftentimes miss the mark. They are relational beings. They like to play. They learn through play. And they learn and copy from the people that they're attached to. And so if they get to play with their food, they get to make stuff out of food, or pretend stuff. I mean, they don't even need real food to play with it. They imagine all sorts of wonderful things. But to your point, I think what's driving us as adults, I know for me, I was alarmed. This is so close to life and death. We've been so programmed by Maslow that, if you don't eat, this is like the most important need. Actually, no, relationship, you can't survive without that. And then inside of your relationships, you're meant to be cared for. So I know it was alarm that drove me. And when I'm working with a lot of parents, we're alarmed that we're not being a good caretaker. We're alarmed our kids aren't going to be healthy. We're alarmed they're not going to grow well. We're alarmed that other parents have figured out something that we have not. I mean, the list goes on and on. It just seems to be apparent these days. You're plagued with feeling like you're not good enough. Just pick a front, and you just feel like you're not doing sleep right or food right or homework right or whatever. But I have to say that we have this in us, and I had to wrestle with that alarm in me and to come back to that place where I was the provider and could take care of my daughter and to feel confidence there. And that's why Gordon's answer to me, when he didn't answer me about what food or how to hide the food or get this cookbook or follow this person for food, was the perfect answer. You are the provider. You will figure this out. Hang in there. And don't forget that relationship and love is the secret sauce that makes everything go down. So when I backed out of coercion, because it wasn't working, and I was alarmed because I was creating an attachment problem, and I backed into a relationship and things unfolded much better. And I'm happy to say she eats lots of different types of things. And she'll remark, wow, Mom, I've sure come a long way. I'm like, yeah, we knew you would. Sometimes it just takes a while. People discover food at their own pace. But I was highly alarmed. I can't say that I wasn't. And how could we not?
Is it safe to say that it's easier to start this younger? So like if, let's say, I know a child that's 11 years old and all they want is chicken fingers and fries or something like that, how would you start at that age versus, 2 or 3 year old, the differences in approach?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great question because as a parent, we always want to start as early as possible because we think we've broken them or wrecked them or set them up down a horrible path. What I do know is that as a developmentalist, who basically studies and understands how people grow, develop, is it's never too late to change. It's never too late to lay you in the grave. Development is very forgiving. So if you have an 11-year-old who's struggling with eating, it's still the same recipe. Go back into connection, reduce coercion, find ways to make food and eating more playful, switch some things up. You don't have to eat at a table. Maybe the table's too provocative now. Maybe we have to do something different. But trust in yourself that you can find a way through. Part of finding your way through is focusing back on your relationship and getting out of these battles and increasing connection, not just around food, but around anything you're doing from morning to evening. It doesn't have to be around food. So yes, ideally we would have a construction of this and an understanding of this when a child is 2 or 3. But in North America, we are lost when it comes to this food culture. We are so detached from any roots that make sense anymore. It's in the hands of too many people who have different agendas. And so I think parents feel very disenfranchised from that sense of knowing what it is their kids need as a strong provider.
I feel like among our clients and my own personal friends as well, there's this sense of, well, I really want to respect my child's individual needs. And I think that there's a balance, right? A lot of them are coming away from parents who are really harsh and not attuned to what they needed. And so maybe they would force them to eat something that just wasn't right for whatever reason, their sensitivities, their palates. And so they just never want their kids to feel the same coercion that they felt. And I think what I'm seeing a lot of is kind of the flip, right? So now we've swung so far the other way where the kids are back in the position of leadership. And when I share about this online, parents often push back to me and they say, Jess, if I'm the leader, if I'm the person serving, then does my kid have no say? Am I going back to what my parents did? How do I balance that line? So I was curious to get your take on that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get asked this question a lot too, because we're trying to understand, okay, if this pendulum is swinging from one side to the other, how do we find our way to something? And balance might be the word, but there might be a better way to look at this in the sense of how do we be the provider that our kid needs? So when you ask yourself that question, there is room for autonomy in that question. A provider doesn't want to override a child's autonomy. A provider wants a child to grow well. A provider wants their teenager to flourish and to take on the world. There is no coercion in provider, but there is leadership. And so starting with a word that makes sense can help guide you. So, but if we go back to something, people say, well, Deb, what does that look like? Well, come back to the family style. When we had butter chicken, I wouldn't ask my kids if they wanted butter chicken. It was just on rotation and it was a quick meal and that's what we do. And we hadn't eaten it for a bit. So I've decided this is the way to go. I would decide how much, rice would be there and butter chicken would be there and edamame would be there. And I would serve it in a predictable way in a place that is as restful as it can be with time and space to connect. And then I'm paying attention. These are the foods that I know they typically eat. Are their tummies a little bit off? Do they seem a little bit more agitated? I'm trying to pick up the cues, just like you would if your child was sick, right? You're picking up the cues. Are they hot? Are they tummy's rumbling? Do they, they go in the bathroom correctly? But you're always picking up the cues as a provider. I've provided what I know they need, but say my daughter isn't hungry. I'm like, oh, she seems upset, or she had a snack. Then I'm thinking to myself, well, I might need to give her something before she goes to bed. We might have a snack together. So I'm going to read a story with her. I'm not going to ask her if she's hungry. I'm paying attention to the cues. I've got her on my radar. But she has autonomy to say yes or no. She's listening to her body. She's eating as much butter chicken as she wants. One day she tried it. Oh my goodness. Then I had to start making more butter chicken because she started to eat it. But you're just, you know what I'm saying? Like, we leave room for autonomy. Love doesn't suffocate you. It creates the foundation from which you grow. So just show up in that provider role. But we can't put the kids in the lead, and we can't just override their autonomy. Neither side works very well for them and for us. We all suffer, actually, dearly.
100%.
Hey friends, just interrupting the episode for a minute just to talk to you about bedtime. If bedtime is a struggle in your home, I want you to know that I totally get it. For years, we struggled with bedtime, and that's because we were looking at it all wrong. We were looking at bedtime stalling and protesting as something that our daughter was doing that was wrong or bad. But we were missing that at the core of the bedtime battles that we were having a separation struggle, and we needed to look at it from a new lens. Our course, Solving Bedtime Battles, is designed to address sleep challenges like separation anxiety, coming out of bed, and bedtime tantrums in a way that brings you closer to your child. You'll find everything you need, video lessons, and a complete PDF script of the course so you can learn and implement strategies in a way that suits your life. We know there's no one-size-fits-all approach to all of bedtime struggles. I can't wait to help you create a more peaceful routine and have more restful nights for your entire family. The course is meant for kids ages 2 to 12. If you want to learn more about solving bedtime battles, head to the link in the show notes, and if you decide you want to purchase it, use the code ROBOTUNICORN, all one word, no spaces, ROBOTUNICORN, to save 10%. Let's make bedtime a time of peace and rest together. All right, back to the show. I'm thinking about how you're talking about the provider role, and I think the hard part is just so many people don't have that model, right? And so I think when we say be in the lead, parents just assume it goes back to being that harsh model.
Yeah.
They don't
Do as I say.
It's hard for them to picture this provider. And that's where your book is so beautiful, because you just outline it in so many different stories and so many different ways, what it looks like to actually provide. And I think when parents start to understand that a good provider, wise leader is someone who actually looks out for the interests of the kids, we're just not asking them a million questions and overwhelming them. I know this has been totally transformative in the way that I support our kids with eating, because there was a while, my chicken on a bun era where I just am like throwing food at the kids and actually throwing them. But, here, take a plate, go sit down, go eat.
Things are stressful. So you're just like, let's do this as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I need some silence. Let's have the kids eat outside while we're inside just eating in the kitchen or something like that.
But then the more I did that, the more I recognized that now meals are always a battle. And they're always whining. They're always crying. They never like what they're being fed. And I think it was after a talk, I saw you talk about this maybe a year and a half ago or something like that. And you had been talking about Nourished. And I really changed the way that I fed the kids. And now we really are prioritizing sitting together as a family and asking each other questions as we eat. And not asking the kids, oh, what do you want for dinner tonight? Like, I never ask them that. And my friends are like, what? What do you mean you never ask your kids what they want? I said, oh, no, I just make them something.
We just set
and
it out.
I just put it on the table and I talk about how yummy it is. And most of the times they start with some complaints and then eventually they eat it. And if they don't, then I notice that. And then I offer a bowl of oatmeal that I know that they like before they go to bed. It just reduces the pressure so much. And we have a sensitive daughter, and I noticed that she's willing to try more things. And if not, the bowl of oatmeal is still there, right? So I think just learning how to be a provider is really tough for a lot of parents without that model.
Mm-hmm. I love your description of, I can imagine you as a family now around food this way. And not that it's perfect and not that they they like it and they eat your $7 lettuce, that you've spent your money on. So there's still frustration, I'm sure, there, as it is for every parent. But there's a sense of togetherness there that's being paired with what you're serving and coming together. So that coming together isn't adverse. Coming together is met with connection. And so, of course, it just rolls all of that together in a bowl. I think you're right that we are missing those provider images, role models. Not everybody had them. We are really trying to change the paradigm in which we raise our children from a very authoritarian to a very relational role. Food is still governed by a very behavioral mindset where it's about the outcome, how much is it? So we've got a lot of work to do to switch it to a relational mindset. But I think one of the things, when I was writing Nourished, it just dawned on me, it just came to me, that any time my daughters, when they were playing, they would always gravitate to the kitchen. 2, 3 years of age, you'll see the very earliest manifestations of caring in a young child come out in food or taking care of something. And it's not for real. It's a baby, it's a train, it's a bug on the road. If they are cared for, and that has sunk into a child, by the age of 2, the caring relational instincts are then moving inside of them to do the same as somebody else. I had my nephew on my lap. He was 18 months. He didn't speak a lot. And I was feeding him while people were out skiing. And I was just cutting up an apple and putting it in his mouth. And he took the apple from his mouth and then he stuck it into mine. And it was just a very simple interaction. So why am I telling you that story? Because those provider instincts are in you. They first showed up when you were little, if you were cared for, you made it through where someone had some caring for you. Those providers or instincts are in you. And if you didn't, then it would be to fall in love with whoever it is that you need to provide for, because that will unlock those caretaking instincts in you to take care of your loved ones, whatever that might be. You don't have to like cooking or cleaning, or shopping or growing food. You just have to love the people that you're taking care of. And that's the secret to being a provider.
One of my favorite things too is, I think it falls in line, not necessarily with the eating aspect of it, but my daughters and I will typically on a weekend, usually a Saturday morning, we'll make waffles or pancakes together, and they'll get flour everywhere. So Jess stays out of the kitchen because she can't be around flour.
So celiac, yeah.
Yeah. But it's that whole experience of doing it together. I find that to be fun because I actually personally don't really care for pancakes, but I make it with them anyway because it's just a fun thing to do together. And then we all eat it together after we've made them.
Oh, that's beautiful. I've had so many parents tell me the stories of how they've played with food differently in reading Nourished and thinking a little bit differently about how do we bring some rest to food. Now, this is not play for you, Jess. This is like a health issue if you're playing with flour. But for you and the girls, this is play. And how that restores just a sense of rest around the provision of care and waking up on a Saturday morning. Remember what Dad used to do? I had one of my clients, oh my God, he's just taken this to heart. And his kids said to him, Dad, could you play chef and restaurant with us? So they had him dress up as a restaurateur, and he had a napkin over his arm, and he took their order. Then he went and he was a chef, and then he served it to them, and he was the waiter again. And he said they wouldn't stop eating. They just kept eating and eating. All they were doing was playing out this restaurateur, and such delight and enjoyment in him, and such delight and enjoyment in their kids. And it was just slowing down enough. But what a wonderful pairing of food and connection. So yeah, I love that. It just takes so much time to do that and to put a ritual around it. That's the other thing too, that I love what you said is it's a Saturday morning. It's waffles with Dad. It's a ritual. So other things then get pushed out and this gets preserved for that time of connection, which is really wise.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to make another note what you're saying about the wisdom that we already have within us, right? Because we often think, oh, I didn't have a model or I didn't have a way of knowing how to do this. But if you watch your children when they're cared for, right? Like even yesterday, my daughter was yelling at me because I wouldn't sit down and have the tea, quote unquote, that she made me with her little teapot, her little set. She made me a cookie, gluten-free. I can tell my children have the ability to care and love me because whenever they make me food and play, it's gluten-free. Yep. So you don't get sick, Mommy. And it's so beautiful. And they make me sit down and then I have to eat it. And then they ask if it's yummy because they know gluten-free food is often yucky. And they'll say, yeah, it's so yummy. You did a good job. And they just run away all happy. And it's like they have it already within them. They know how to care and they know how to nurture. And we do too, but we just lost it. And so I think for a lot of parents, it's about finding that back. And we find that back when we love our children and we want to provide care again. So I think just the way you illustrated that is so beautiful, because parents get alarmed feeling like they don't have a model, but they actually already have it. It's just finding it back.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Oh, and I love the caring in your children. They just know this would hurt mommy with the gluten-free, and such intention there already in such a little body. You can just see, you don't actually have to drink the tea or have a real cookie to feel the love that is there for you. That's the invitation, right? That's what nourishes. We realize that the food is just such a small part of this. The nourishment is on the emotional level, psychological, how your memories are formed. Like the nourishment is all around, and it gets paired together. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's funny because you talk about it unlocking memories. I still to this day say to Jess that anytime there's butter melting in a pan, I go back to being at my grandparents' house as a kid, and I can see the sunlight coming in through their kitchen, and they had a big round table in there, and my uncles were quite young, so I would be sitting around with some of my uncles as well. And it's funny how every single time I smell butter melting, I go back to that.
It's beautiful. And it's kind of like the long arm of attachment, right? You can just pull somebody in, that memory, that sense of mattering, that invitation, the people that were there, and you can just feel full in a psychological way. Nature is profound in how we are wired up this way. It was beautiful actually to delve into this and to discover, there's a lot of secrets here, and there's wisdom of carrying these things together. This is just a glimpse into that, and one can never really understand it all. But we would be foolish not to follow that in what has been so carefully joined together. I bet everybody has that. I asked everybody, who would be your favorite person to cook for you? And so the answers were remarkable, but it was always back to this kind of a story of this person took care of me. This is what I remember. This is the food that I attach to them. This is what brings me comfort. I had one lady said that when she had her cancer diagnosis, she didn't understand that she ran from the doctor's appointment and just started to eat halva, Polish sweet. She just had to eat as much as she could. Just somehow brought her back to her mother and needing that comfort. Her mother had passed, just needing that comfort. And she didn't understand why she couldn't stop eating this candy. She realized it was about my mother and needing comfort.
Yeah. I think something about your work in Nourished, for me personally, after reading the book, it really healed some pieces of myself and my own food struggles over the years. As I know for me and for most women and a lot of men as well, you have all this wisdom when you're a kid of eating, right? And kids, we know too, they will tell you when they're full. You know, they know how much to eat. They know what kind of food feels good for their body, all of those things. But then over time, you get society's messaging and telling you, you know, you should weigh a certain amount, or you should eat this and this much protein, or sugar is bad, or all of these different things. And I think you can quickly lose the wisdom. And so then you stop eating foods that once maybe provided you with that comfort that you had when you were a kid, right? Like I always think about my grandma. Every single Sunday, she would make cake, and it's chocolate cake, came from a box, had little sprinkles on top, right? And every Sunday for years, I ate this cake until one day, the messaging about sugar changed, and I said no to cake. And I remember my grandma being like, what the heck, you're saying no to Sunday cake? Like we have cake every Sunday. And then for years, I stopped having cake. And I think this approach, this relational approach to food can be so healing for us too. And I was hoping we could talk about that and how we can preserve that wisdom in our children so that they don't, like it's just, now I look at it and I see everywhere, you know, don't eat sugar, or this is bad, or eat keto,
There's a lot
or
of
eat
TikTok
that.
experts, social media experts.
And it's all making us lose, like you said, this ancient wisdom of what food means, which is so much more than food. So I was hoping you could touch on that a little bit too, because I know for me that's been so helpful.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. It is provocative. Food is provocative for us now as parents, and especially in North America with diet culture, with body image stuff, with food marketing and messages and nutrition. I mean, food is anything but enjoyable, it seems. And it is meant to be a gift. If you think Mother Nature is a great provider, then food is meant to be a gift to help take care of us. And so it's become very perverted. It's been reduced to its very basic molecular structure. It's become nutrients rather than this whole source of food. I think the values around what we eat, getting back to some neutrality of it, that food is a gift instead of it's good or bad or whatever. Now, you know foods that you want your kids to eat, and so you serve them. Your grandma decided that chocolate cake was indeed a special treat on a Sunday, and that was that. And that's what she wanted. That was her choice. She was the provider. She was in charge. You get to make the decisions about when chocolate cake would be eaten. Maybe it was a Sunday thing. Dessert doesn't have to be every night. You get to make those choices as a provider. But the messages to kids that this food is toxic or bad or good, and Scott, you are so right. TikTok has now taken over as the influence of choice. Like, who were the original influencers when it came to food? You've both spoken about them, right? Your grandparents and your parents. They're the original influencers. They were the one who loved you the most, who were most invested in keeping you around, who probably made the best that they could from their caretaking, and in whose hands your body would most likely digest and use the food that was given, and you would be wholly cared for. Increased resilience and everything else would come from those pairings of food and attachment. So we've gotten really lost in this, and food isn't a gift anymore. And I hear it all the time. Oh, I'm going to go do a workout so I can earn my cake tonight. That's an outcome. That's behavioral. I've got to be good enough to do this. Like, should we not be concerned about health? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it falls under having a good provider. Am I taking care of them? Am I taking care of me? And under that, guys, you'll make the choices that are in everyone's best interest. You don't have to share all of that wisdom. You just take the lead. The original influencer should be us. And so we have to keep our relationship strong so it doesn't open it up to competing attachments. And if it does, that they come to us and say, Mom, I'm hearing a lot of stuff about sugar out there. Is it bad? I'm really liking cake. And then we can say,
so do I.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, we still eat cake in our family. Not everybody agrees, but Mommy's decided that, this is just how we roll. The research on eating disorders is really clear. It's not generally good enough to have one parent acting as a shield around culture, these messages. You actually need both parents to be together on this. And that serves as a preservative shield around body image types of issues, when there's food neutrality in the home, when you're kind of pulling in the same place. If one parent, because remember, a child is attached ideally to both parents. So you create a lot of conflict if you open the doorway to much more distress around food and body image and stuff. So research is really clear. Two parents generally, it doesn't matter, if they're together or apart, but generally pulling in the same direction, providing a shield around culture that is so toxic this way, taking the lead on food. When it gets to more levels of distress with food, that isn't enough. The parents pulling in a particular direction together isn't found to have been implicated in terms of eating disorders. That we would be much wiser. And a lot of people who I did interview who work in eating disorders say first myth is that it's not about the food. Eating disorders actually aren't about food. It's about a chronic emotional stress response. And food now carries the emotions of alarm and frustration and pursuit and all sorts of things that get stirred up in the face of separation. So we would be much better off to look at our eating disorders, orthorexia, anorexia, bulimia, even ARFID as a chronic stress response. You can make the argument for ARFID in some ways. It's multifaceted, so we can't just paint everything with the same brush. There are neurobiological issues here as well. But generally speaking, if we can maintain some neutrality around food, if we can take the lead on it, we have our best bet in terms of steering through what is a very toxic food culture, diet culture.
I think about this all the time, Deb, because, we have our girls, and right now they are so innocent when it comes to food. I follow so much of what you just said. That's how I approach food with the kids. I think a lot about the rituals that we have around food in the house. It's huge. Things like Scott just had a birthday, so we get ice cream cake from Dairy Queen. And that's the story. And there's nothing wrong with ice cream cake from Dairy Queen, because when it's Daddy's birthday, that's what we get. And we eat it as a family. And like all the different rituals, like pancakes or waffles on Saturday morning, things like that. And so I think encouraging parents too, because we have our own stories in our head of sugar is bad and protein this and kids should eat that and whatever. We have our own stories that we've learned. So for parents who are uncomfortable maybe with having sugar in the house or talking to kids in such a neutral way, like building those rituals in, I think can be one really positive way, at least, that's impacted us.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah,
I mean, they were asking for us to do it last night. So Sunday evening, they were saying, can we have pancakes for dinner? Because I think part of that is they want to help actually make them.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun that goes into it.
Yes. Yeah, how lovely.
But I really think as like they get older, one of the protective factors will be continuing the rituals and continuing to talk about why the rituals are important and why we eat cake, right? Why, like for my grandma, why we ate cake on Sunday, that was important to know that exactly grandma provides, like, and this is her way of caring and showing love, is that she bakes the cake on Saturday night knowing the whole family's going to come over on Sunday and eat it, right? But preserving that in our kids in a world that's going to tell them all these other things, like it does feel like such a pressure to me.
It is daunting today. I can't lie. It is daunting. I've raised 2 girls myself. And part of it, the challenge is that we send our kids out into the world. It's not all about what happens in the home. The world is wide open now from any social media. Our kids are influenced from places that our parents couldn't ever have imagined. So we've got a lot of conflicting information and people competing for their attachment, for their attention, and who offer belonging, who offer loyalty, who offer superficial forms of connection oftentimes. So we have competition on our doorstep. And that is why when I looked at this area, I thought, oh my goodness, what a way to be able to hold on to your family and your kids by showing up as a provider in whatever way, shape, or form that looks like. Eat at a table, have a picnic, have a coffee while they eat, Cheerios. It's up to you what that looks like. Go out to Dairy Queen and have a wonderful piece of their ice cream cakes. Whatever that looks like to you, find your ritual, preserve it. Peer orientation, I think, is one of the biggest dangers around food issues, because when they become more attached to their peers, when they become more influenced by their peers, want to belong to their peers, act like, talk like, be the same shape as, have the same values. What if you're part of a peer group that says chocolate cake is evil, and you've got a grandma and mom and dad who say, no, chocolate cake is fantastic. You've now got a competing attachment. Whose group do you belong to? You're going to go where you feel at home the most. So as adults, we have to hold on to our kids. We have to reduce our preoccupation that they get along with their peer group or have a social group, that they have to be socialized by their peers. We spend so much time focusing on that, when in actual fact, what we really need to do more than anything is to, as Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Mate write, hold on to our kids, make sure they're connected to their parents, to their aunts, to their uncles, to their younger brothers or sisters, or, neighbors, or show up in the community and volunteer and be part of that, and be in beautiful cascading care, so that they can feel cared for and they can care for others. And that is where their influence comes from, so that they're held in that connection. But that is what is most daunting. And for parents who've got kids going into teenage years, tween years, the foundation for this is all in the early years. So hold on to your kids. Make those family meals a priority. I was shocked at how well it worked during my kids' adolescence. I'd say, well, just, have your friends come over, or we'll all go out to dinner and bring your friend. And okay, and then we'll go out afterwards. Okay, that's fine, but let's have a meal first before you go out for the evening. That changes the trajectory of a lot.
For sure, I can see that.
I think your message, it's so important. It's a lot of what we try and talk about here too, but in a culture where I think we're really prioritizing extracurriculars and, like I met with a client recently who's like, their child was being tutored. They were in a whole bunch of extracurriculars. Every single night was busy. They never had time for family meals. And we kind of talked about what is important. And I think what you're doing by talking about relationships in terms of food is saying, this is actually important, and we think all these other things are, but what if we prioritized relationship and time with our family above and beyond extracurriculars or, all these other things we can do, but we don't have to. I think we would see a huge shift in children in the current kind of mental health crisis that we're seeing, just like as a broader issue that's going on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's because parents don't want their kids to fall behind, but it feels like you have to have your kids in every single extracurricular activity out there just to make sure that they're going to know what they want to do after they're done high school or something. Like, it's challenging.
Yeah, it is. And it's very sad. How did we come to value ourselves so less as the primary influencers and caretakers in our children's life? Like, how did we come to value what it is that we have to offer so little, right? When they grow in a healthy way, become their own separate person, they get to play, they're going to figure out what they want to do. They can learn well. Kids are fantastic as learners when they're at rest and they feel taken care of and their basic needs, they're all there, they're going to grow, they're going to learn, they're going to discover, they're going to explore. But it comes back, I think, again, to just not trusting in what we have to offer, getting talked out of that. My mom had 5 kids. She breastfed one of them because she was talked out of breastfeeding by the formula companies who basically said, we have a better substance here for your child than you can produce in your own body. Now, I'm not against formula for when it's necessary and life-saving efforts that are needed for a child. But the idea that my mother would be talked out of what she provides is a sad story, but it still happens and is replicated over and over and over again. You ask most kids what they would prefer to do. And if they are connected to their families and their homes, it's very hard sometimes to get them out of the house. Getting out of the house to an activity is overrated. They'd rather stay in their pajamas and play with you any day if there's connection, safety, and play at home. They just want to be near their people. And that's the way they grow best of all. But we've lost such faith in that. It's such a tragedy when it comes to relationship.
And I really want parents to know it's okay. Right? If you prioritize a night, hey, yeah, it's a school night and yeah, I could sign them up for gymnastics, but you know what? We're just going to stay home Tuesday nights and it's going to be pajamas and picnic dinner on the floor if the table's too hard right now, right? I think we also get stuck on some rigid rules. I had a follower of Nurtured First say that one of her hard and fast rules is absolutely no toys at the table ever. And I thought of you, Deb, and I remember you talking in your training about, well, if the table's hard, maybe bring a little truck on the table, right? And I remember thinking how eye-opening that is to so many parents who feel like we have to have all these rules and rigidity. And yes, structure is important, but we can get creative too when meals are hard or, and we need to reconnect ourselves back to our kids.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between rules and rituals, right? I think when I get most alarmed is I oftentimes try to control and lock things down and keep them really rigid because that's my alarm system, just trying to have a little bit of structure, a little bit of safety, but it's not. It feels coercive if I'm coming from that place. Whereas a ritual that's done to preserve connection, it's about gathering, it's about play, feels very, very different. The research showed that to have some of the preservative effects of the family meal, so healthier self-esteem, less drug and alcohol use, like vocabulary. You want kids, like the best literacy program would be eating with people who have good words. Because essentially you're learning in attachment, not just the food, but because you're dependent and you're receiving the food, you're receiving the stories, your intergenerational history. You're being collected, you're learning your values, your vocabulary is influenced, your self-esteem. So it's one of the best mental health strategies we actually have is to eat together in connection, not just at home, but at school. Can you imagine how schools would be transformed by caring about each other through food? In the schools that I did do research on, it was amazing. Grandparents were part of it, parents were part of it, kids were feeding other classes and stuff. But the research shows eating at home about 3 times a week is the bare minimum. And for some busy families where there is structure, routine, and kids are involved in sports, yes, it's not like quitting all those things, but we have to keep time for what is important. So maybe you're having a smoothie in the car with your child on the way to practice and you're connecting. That's, fair game. You're providing for your kid, but 3 times a week, trying to get together. And with teenagers, because of their age, their mobility, their flexibility, their engagement, it's harder to hold on to kids, particularly in the teen years. And we see a huge decline there in terms of family meals. And I think what we're seeing is more peer orientation and preferring to be with their friends. So we get to figure out a lot of this in the context of our own family. Who's working, who's available, single parents, whatever that looks like. Parents can figure this out. Schools need to figure this out, especially in Canada.
Yeah, I'm visualizing even postpartum moms, right? Like, what would it mean for them to have their grandma come and bring a meal and just sit with them and eat together, right? I think there's just so much isolation. I think about myself as a new mom and you were working, right? And I'm alone all the time.
I was traveling constantly, so it was almost never home.
Never eating with anyone. The isolation we face right now is so real and it's so hard, and we've lost a lot of the intergenerational support as well. And I just think if we could bring that back, I just wonder how much things would change for parents who are struggling.
Oh, it'd be profound. Everybody wants to hold the new baby, but who's holding the mom and saying, or the dad, can I help you here with food? All the research I showed that, people eating alone don't eat as much or eat as well, like senior citizens. They don't eat as well when they're alone. There was one program that was operated by a nonprofit organization, and the goal was to have mental health patients come in and learn how to cook because they're not cooking well when they're on their own. So we want to teach you how to cook so that when you go back, you have better health and nutrition because that'll help your mental health. And they found the program was success. People showed up. They loved it. They were participating. They said this was the best program ever. When it ended, they were just devastated. But the researcher who was talking about the program said it was a failure in the sense that they didn't go home and make those meals and eat better. I'm like, are you kidding me? You've lost the plot. It's because they are on their own that's not happening. You need to bring an eating community. That was replicated over and over and over again. We do better. And so family programs that say, hey, listen, after work, come to our drop-in program. We're going to cook you food. You can socialize with other parents, let your kids play. Do you know how popular those programs are? They're the most popular ones. Someone's going to feed me. I get to come and socialize with other families.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, heaven.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. I think even one of my friends, we don't live in the same city, but she said every Wednesday night she makes soup and we'll invite friends over and all they have to bring is bread. And she said every Wednesday night I make the soup, someone brings bread and we just share a meal together. And she just was saying how deep the impact that's been on their life and the life of their family and their children. And they all sit and eat together. It's so simple. But I think about all your work and everything that you've been sharing, just even as adults, right? To stop our own loneliness that we have and the burnout that we face as parents. Like, can we share meals with friends? Can we lighten the load a little bit and have some other people over? And I feel like we've been doing a lot more of that. And it's incredible how much it's even deepened our relationships with our friends too.
Yeah, well, I love it. It's beautiful. This is an area that we can play with so much. It's just seeing that we're in the lead of this. We get to be a provider and show up however we want. The benefit of not having tons of role models this way is that it gives you a lot of creative license and freedom, so I know that I love when I show up and play with food, whether it's having raclette or a pizza oven I got for my birthday one year because my family said that my pizza sucked, so they got me a proper pizza oven. So it was bittersweet. And they said, your pizza's horrible. Please stop feeding us that. So here's a nice pizza oven. So, but the pizza oven, I just bring it out and you have people over and you're one person that has a pizza at the time and you're making it and you're talking and everybody's together. And we found that the pizza tastes better if you play Italian music. And it's just, it does. The music enhances it. It just enhances the play. But just stopping and, people say, oh, that was really good. But then you realize it wasn't just the food. You're already full before the food even gets into your belly because you've got relationship, you've got play, and there's this sense of rest. And you're just like, oh, I just needed that. I just needed that break from everything in my life. I can get back to my work, but we need to have those places of rest.
It's interesting because I think it's very easy to fall into the mindset of, I'm so busy, I have to make so many decisions in the day. So then to decide to have that family meal and spend all that time preparing, it's like that one extra thing. But we've seen it in our own family, how much of a difference that makes in the relationship we have with our girls and how much we have learned about what's going on at school and with their friends. And they're starting to help each other, even though they're quite young. They're like interjecting and helping each other out on their own already.
Love that.
I think we forget, like to your point, Scott, we forget that it gives something back to us when we give to our children. And it's, the same, I think, with sleep, with so many different things. We feel like, oh, it's exhausting. It's another thing I have to do. But once you do it, the family meal or helping your kids sleep well, all these things, we realize it actually returns something to us and can actually help us feel full as well. And I think that's the piece that's missed in this conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the ritual that you put around it. We do not have pizzas every night. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. That is a big undertaking. And sometimes we just order in a pizza and just call it a day and have a movie. So when you put a ritual around it, though, then okay, I've got to be prepared for that. And it takes the work out of it because you're just in the rhythm and the routine. But it can be simple. It can be grand. It can be whatever you want.
Is there a ritual that you would say is standard for your family that you always kind of do that your family can expect?
Yeah. One of them is again, it's a generational one. So my parents were both immigrants to Canada from Britain and met here. And roast dinners are always a big thing, Sunday roast dinners. and Yorkshire puddings in particular. So my mom was always very big on making roast beef, Yorkshire pudding for a celebration. And there's 5 girls in my family, 5 daughters. And my mother would say, if you have a boyfriend, because, boys would come and go, don't bring someone home unless they're roast beef worthy. We don't need to meet everybody. Just bring home the ones that, are roast beef worthy, that might be sticking around for a while. And that was the way of sort of introduction and a way of breaking the ice, as my mom would make this beautiful Yorkshire pudding. She passed away actually last year, and at her service, one of my sisters remarked that, you remember Mom, Grandma, saying that her Yorkshires were so big that you could put saddles on them and ride them. And this was her way of saying that they had puffed up so beautifully. Now, I have not mastered that. I don't know why. I asked her a million times. Mine are short and stubby and doughy. But if you ask my kids, and so we have Yorkshire pudding and roast beef dinner, same kind of tradition on a Sunday, sometimes, when everybody can gather. But my kids will tell you that my Yorkshire puddings are better than my mother's. And I will tell you that my mother's Yorkshire puddings taste better than mine.
It's so beautiful. Just a note on grief and food. I think there's such a tie to like a healthy grief and eating the food. I was mentioning my grandma's cake a few times, and I mean, I can't eat it anymore because now I have celiac. I didn't know as a kid, but my extended family still gets together almost every Sunday, and they still make the same cake. And they make grandma's cake and a lemon cake. And I always think to myself, what a beautiful way to celebrate her memory of her making it. And I watch our kids eat her cake. Mm-hmm. And I just think to myself, like, this is it. This is so beautiful. This is how you see that food is so much more than what we put in our body and the sugar and whatever, the nutrients. Like it's comfort. It's grieving. It's just beautiful. It's profound. And your work has really helped me shape the way I see it in a new way. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for bringing it alive in the context of your family and your beautiful girls.
So I guess this is a good place for us to close down. But what do you think for you is the next, frontier for this conversation? Like, where do you hope to see, or how do you hope to get this message out to more people? Because again, I think it's very easy for us. We have so many decisions to make that we're like, okay, let's just have a healthy meal. Kids, eat your broccoli. It's good for you. It's good for your brain. It helps you grow. Just do that. Don't ask questions. So I guess where do you want to see this go so that maybe parents aren't so much like that and are a little bit more focused on the relationship and, of course, feeding healthy foods and whatever, all that stuff, but knowing that there is that balance or that the relationship is very important.
Well, I think that awareness alone will help guide you. I think if you got that, you're in good standing. It's already started to help you formulate different questions, like, how do I lay the table, not just in the food or the place settings, but for connection? That's a great question. What's getting in the way of my kids being receptive? Where have there been battles that I need to step away from? So if your top question is how do I do this in a way that nurtures and takes care of my family and shows up in a way that invites them without force, without coercion, allows them to have autonomy, but it's a generous offering. It starts with the invitation. And so change what you're doing. Experiment. Be creative. Be honest with yourself. Try to read your kids and where you're at. And you might not like everything you see. You might feel a lot of emotions, as we usually do as parents: guilt, shame, blame. Oh, there's so many more. But don't be afraid of them. Just, you can go through them. Sometimes they have to be looked at. I ended up writing a book about something I never thought I would write about, and was transformed in the process of looking at what wasn't working. And that is always the place of growth. So don't be afraid to have a look and trust yourself.
Beautiful. And everyone should read Nourished.
Yeah, we'll put a link to it in the show notes. So links that you have anyone who's interested. Hopefully there are lots more interested people after our conversation today. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's so delightful to meet both of you. I've heard so much about you, Scott, and our conversation.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, all good things.
But it's always beautiful to talk. I mean, I feel like I could talk about this conversation forever, but it's such a good one. And I hope a lot of people will read Nourished. And I know we've talked about this a lot, Deb, is like the more people talk about it, the more they read the book or listen to this podcast and talk about it with their friends. Like, I think that's really how the message grows and how we can change as a society the way that we talk to our kids about food. So yeah, I think it really is in these conversations, right?
For sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree completely. So thanks for being part of it and asking such great questions, insightful questions.
Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We are glad that you are here. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it interesting, we'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and a review. Scott and I actually sit down together and read them all. A 5-star rating helps us share our podcast and get these important messages out there. Thank you so much for listening, and we can't wait to talk to you again next time.